The year 1866 dawned with a promise of momentous change for the fragmented Italian peninsula. King Victor Emmanuel II, ruler of the nascent Kingdom of Italy, harbored a burning ambition to unify his country completely. The primary obstacle to this dream was the continued Austrian dominion over the rich province of Venetia. An opportunity arose when Prussia, under the astute leadership of Otto von Bismarck, prepared for war against Austria. An alliance was forged between Italy and Prussia, a pact of convenience aimed at dismantling Austrian power. This conflict would be known as the Third Italian War of Independence, a crucial chapter in the Risorgimento. The Italian military, brimming with patriotic fervor, mobilized a force that significantly outnumbered their Austrian adversaries. However, this numerical superiority masked deep-seated issues within the Italian command structure. The Italian army was split into two main bodies, a decision that would prove fatal. General Alfonso Ferrero La Marmora, a respected but cautious veteran, commanded the army of the Mincio. Accompanying him was King Victor Emmanuel II himself, a symbol of national unity but a source of command friction. The second force, the Army of the Po, was led by the more aggressive General Enrico Cialdini. A bitter rivalry and lack of communication existed between La Marmora and Cialdini. They operated not as a unified force, but as two separate, competing entities. The Italian plan was for La Marmora's massive army to cross the Mincio River and directly engage the Austrians. Meanwhile, Cialdini's army was to create a diversionary threat further south. The Italians fundamentally underestimated their opponent, Archduke Albrecht, Duke of Teschen. Albrecht, a cousin of the Emperor, was a highly competent and decisive commander. He commanded the Austrian Southern Army, a force of roughly 75,000 men. Though outnumbered, his troops were well-trained, disciplined, and experienced. Albrecht also possessed a significant strategic advantage: the quadrilateral fortresses. This network of 4 fortified cities, Verona, Legnago, Mantua, and Peschiera, formed an almost impregnable defensive system. It allowed the Austrians to shelter their army and move troops rapidly between strategic points. The Italian High Command incorrectly assumed the Austrians would remain on the defensive within the quadrilateral. They believed the main Austrian army was far to the east, behind the Adige River. This was a grave miscalculation. Archduke Albrecht had no intention of waiting to be attacked. Receiving excellent intelligence on the Italian movements, he decided to seize the initiative. Albrecht planned to march his army west from Verona and strike the flank of La Marmora's advancing columns. He would occupy the rolling hills between the Mincio River and Verona, a terrain dominated by the small village of Custoza. On June 23rd, La Marmora's army began its slow, ponderous advance across the Mincio. The movement was disorganized, with different divisions taking different roads without clear coordination. A sense of complacency pervaded the Italian ranks. They expected a long march before encountering the enemy. The morning of June 24th arrived, hot and humid. As the Italian divisions advanced towards the hills they intended to occupy, they were met with a shocking surprise. The Austrians were already there, waiting for them in prepared positions. Albrecht's bold offensive had caught the Italians completely off guard. The Battle of Custoza began not as a planned engagement, but as a chaotic meeting engagement. The fighting erupted all along a scattered, disorganized front. In the early stages, the Italian soldiers of General Brignone's division fought with courage. They launched a fierce assault on the Austrian 9th Corps, holding the key position of Belvedere Hill. After a bloody struggle, They managed to seize the summit, a moment of early Italian success. However, this initial victory was not reinforced. La Marmora, struggling to comprehend the confusing battle, failed to commit his reserves. He held back fresh divisions that could have secured the gains and turned the tide. Archduke Albrecht, in stark contrast, remained calm and in control. He skillfully directed a series of powerful Austrian counterattacks. The Austrian V-Corps slammed into the Italian flank, increasing the pressure on the overextended lines. Desperate Italian countercharge was led by Prince Amadeo, the king's son. He showed immense bravery but was severely wounded in the fierce fighting. The failure of this charge demoralized the nearby Italian troops. The Austrians, sensing the shift in momentum, pressed their advantage relentlessly. They successfully recaptured the vital high ground around Custoza. The Austrian cavalry, particularly the elite Ulan Lancers, proved devastatingly effective. They launched charge after charge, breaking up Italian formations and spreading panic. By early afternoon, General La Marmora was convinced the battle was lost. He issued orders for a general retreat back towards the Mincio River. Tragically, his decision was based on incomplete and pessimistic reports. Unbeknownst to him, on another part of the field, General Govonain's division was achieving a remarkable success. They had repulsed the Austrian 7th Corps and were holding their ground firmly. This success, however, was an isolated one, unknown to the High Command. The lack of communication between the Italian divisions was a catastrophic failure. The retreat soon turned into a disorganized rout for many units. The roads leading back to the bridges became clogged with men, horses, and wagons. A final, heroic stand was made by the Grenadiers of Sardinia in the village of Custoza itself. They fought with incredible bravery against overwhelming odds to cover the army's retreat. By late afternoon, their position was finally overrun. The Austrian victory was complete and undeniable. The Italians had been decisively driven back across the river they had crossed with such confidence. Italian casualties were heavy, a testament to the ferocity of the fighting. They suffered over 700 killed, more than 3,000 wounded, and over 4,000 men were captured. Austrian losses were also significant but considerably lower. Archduke Albrecht, despite his crushing victory, made a controversial decision. Chose not to pursue the shattered Italian army across the Mincio. His own forces were exhausted, and his cavalry had been badly mauled in the day's fighting. This decision allowed the remnants of La Marmora's army to escape complete destruction. The defeat at Custoza was a profound national humiliation for Italy. The blame fell heavily on General La Marmora and the flawed command structure. The army required a full month to reorganize and recover from the blow. However, the fate of Venetia would not be decided on Italian battlefields. Just 9 days later, on July 3rd, the Prussian army delivered a crushing blow to Austria. At the Battle of Königgrätz in Bohemia, the main Austrian army was decisively defeated. A single event rendered Austria's victory at Custoza strategically irrelevant. Austria was forced to redeploy its troops, including many from Italy, to defend Vienna itself. Forced to the negotiating table, Austria had to sue for peace. As part of the peace settlement, Austria was compelled to cede Venetia. In a face-saving gesture, the province was first transferred to France, who then handed it to Italy. Thus, Italy achieved its primary war aim despite its own military failure. The Battle of Custoza remains a classic example of how a smaller, better-led army can defeat a larger but poorly coordinated foe. Archduke Albrecht's leadership and tactical brilliance secured a stunning victory against the odds. For Italy, It was a bitter lesson in the importance of unified command and clear strategy. The acquisition of Venetia was a major step, but the path to true unification was paved with both diplomatic success and military humiliation. The echoes of Custoza would influence Italian military thinking for decades to come. Battle took place on the same ground as an earlier Austrian victory over the Piedmontese in 1848. This coincidence gave the location a doubly bitter significance for the Italians. The terrain itself, a series of rolling hills and small villages, was difficult to navigate for large formations. This landscape favored defenders and made coordinated attacks challenging. The Italian army's intelligence gathering was abysmal throughout the campaign. They marched blindly into a trap of their own making. In contrast, Albrecht's use of cavalry patrols and local informants provided him with a clear picture of Italian movements. The individual Italian soldier often fought with great courage, but this bravery was squandered by poor leadership. Many units were sent into battle piecemeal, without support on their flanks. The Austrian artillery was generally better positioned and more effectively directed. Their cannon fire broke up several Italian assaults before they could even reach the Austrian lines. King Victor Emmanuel II, though present, did little to resolve the command disputes. His presence may have added to the confusion, with generals hesitant to take initiative. The battle was a stark demonstration of the superiority of professional staff work. Albrecht's staff had meticulously planned the army's movements and logistical support. The Italian supply system, by contrast, began to break down as soon as the retreat began. The heat of the day played a significant role, exhausting soldiers on both sides. Water was scarce, and many men suffered from heat stroke. The Austrian white uniforms, while elegant, made them conspicuous targets against the green hills. However, their disciplined volley fire often negated this disadvantage. The Italian army was a mix of veterans from previous wars and newly conscripted recruits. This disparity in experience showed in the heat of battle. Bersaglieri, Italy's elite light infantry, fought with their customary élan. Their rapid movements and marksmanship caused problems for the Austrians in several sectors. However, like other units, they were often unsupported and eventually forced to withdraw. The battle's outcome led to a fierce political storm back in Florence, the Italian capital at the time. La Marmora was forced to resign his command in disgrace. The dream of a swift and glorious liberation of Venetia had been shattered. The Austrian army, for its part, celebrated a victory that bolstered its morale immensely. They had defended the emperor's domains and upheld the honor of the army. This morale boost, however, was short-lived due to the disaster at Königgrätz. The war on the Italian front also saw a naval battle at Lissa, another humiliating defeat for Italy. The combination of Custoza and Lissa revealed the significant weaknesses of the young Italian kingdom's military. Despite the military failings, the strategic alliance with Prussia paid off. Bismarck's victory was Italy's ultimate salvation. The transfer of Venetia was a moment of great national joy, overshadowing the military defeats. The Iron Crown of Lombardy, once held by Austrian emperors, was now firmly in Italian hands. Custoza served as a harsh but necessary wake-up call for the Italian armed forces. It spurred reforms in training, logistics, and, most importantly, command and control. The battle is remembered as a tactical masterpiece for Austria, but a strategic dead end. For Italy, it was a tactical disaster that paradoxically led to a major strategic victory. The fields of Custoza, once soaked in blood, eventually returned to peaceful vineyards and farms. The memory of that hot June day in 1866 remains etched in the military annals of both Austria and Italy.